We just give up. And we try to find a way to hide the shack and the reality of the shack, because we think that if anybody finds out about it, they will hate it as much as we do. And someday, in the process of our own journey, we have to go back in that place. And we have to begin a process of the transformation of the heart. It's our only hope. Because, you know, I saw this sign the other day. It says, don't try to be anybody else. Everybody else is already somebody. Right? You know? And part of the beauty of what I believe that the book has done, it's opened up a conversation for so many people about what is the character and nature of God, what is the value, why do I matter as a human being, and what do I do about pain and suffering and the process of forgiveness, and those kinds of things which are so much a part of authentic humanity. In a postmodern world, you know, everything has moved towards technology and technique and all those kinds of things. But we still have a longing in our heart to be real. We still have a longing in our heart for authentic communication, to be loved without condition, to be known. We still are pulled by art and by music and about the things that speak to us that are the intangibles. In a world where everybody has said it's only what you can taste and touch and what you can feel in the moment, there is something beyond that is calling us. In your generation, the younger people, they are caught in the middle of a huge transition in this world. This world is totally different than it was 20 years ago. Totally. And people don't know what to do because of the changes that have just ripped through the world. And now you can't hide anymore. Culture cannot keep itself apart from the rest of the world. And things are not the same. And you have a generation where you will get to ask the questions that my parents would never have asked, you know. And I wasn't allowed to ask, you know, growing up. But you get to ask those questions. And you get to begin to work on a bigger frame of reference and not get stuck inside the ideologies that kept us so locked up and divided. Does that make sense to you? So what I'm trying to do in this story is to show one man's life. And I was showing my own to my children, saying the God I grew up with couldn't heal anything in my broken heart. So this book is very personal and involves my own journey. Mackenzie, the main character, spends a weekend in the shack, just a weekend. That weekend represents 11 years for me. So I didn't write it because I was going to become a bestseller. It didn't even cross my mind to publish it. I went to the local print shop, made 15 copies. You know, with a little spiral bound thing on the side, a little plastic cover. And I gave it to my children and to my wife and to my friends. And I went back to work. It never even crossed my mind to publish. And my friends, you know, they kept giving it away. You give a book to your children for Christmas and they go, "Oh, thanks, Dad. You know, we'll get right on that, you know." So it took them a while, but my friends, they were all over it. And they began giving, I had to make 15 more copies, you know. And it eventually got into the hands of somebody who thought it could become a movie. And that's what started the conversation about it actually being published. So I'm working 3 jobs. You know, 3 years ago, my main job was little manufacturer's rep office. I was shipping and receiving and cleaning the toilets and doing the janitorial. And that was my main job, you know. And we got it ready for publication, sent it to a bunch of publishers. Half of them were faith-based publishers, half of them were secular mainstream, And at that point, I'm hoping the secular people pick it up, because frankly, I didn't want this to come out Christian fiction, you know. We don't have a good reputation. You have to be dead to write good Christian fiction. So I'm not dead, you know.
Still alive.
Yeah, still alive, yeah. So, you know, but I didn't have to worry, because all 26 said no. They all turned it down. So 2 guys I know created a publishing company. They just signed the papers with the government, paid their whatever, and we had a publishing company. And we pooled our resources. I had a friend who would loan me some money. One of the guys had some savings, and the other one had a Visa and a MasterCard. Right? So in May of 2007, we ordered 10,000 copies, because you get a price break at 10,000. And they delivered to a garage, a house, 11,000 copies. They apologized, extra 1,000, we don't know where it came from, but would you pay for it, you know? And we didn't know any better, so we paid for it. And the guy whose house that they delivered it to, he was putting in people's sprinkler systems in their yards during the day and shipping books at night. You know? We set up a website, and to make a long story short, in the first 13 months, and you have to understand, in the United States and Canada, the average book only sells 5,000 copies. Okay? 92% of all books published this year will be out of print within 2.5 years. Less than 4% of all books ever makes it to 100,000, and that includes textbooks. So I didn't know any of that. All I knew was, if you write a novel and you can sell 100,000 copies, Hollywood will talk to you about a film. That's sort of the benchmark. So we were hoping in 5 years to make it to 100,000. We set up a website so people could actually buy the book. And in the first 13 months, from May of 07 to June of 08, we spent less than $300 in marketing and advertising and shipped over 1 million books. There's no explanation. I mean, even the secular publishers who said no, they came back and said, this is a God thing. You know, we might be atheists, but this is a God thing. And so it's been a phenomenon. We're now somewhere between 13 and 15 million copies in the 41 languages. And it's absolutely remarkable, because people say, did this surprise you? Yeah, well, yeah. You know, I was just thinking 15 copies, you know. And so this has all been an absolute miracle and a surprise. And I have been allowed into the stories that people who read the book have sent me. I have over 100,000 emails now from all over the world. You know, and the book has just done this remarkable thing. It has given people a language to have a conversation about God that's not a religious conversation, a conversation about pain and suffering and the process of transformation of the heart that is in a way that is easily able to be communicated. And it's been word of mouth. We haven't done anything. So, you know, I have no special skills or secrets or insight, or, you know, I get invited, come speak and tell people how to do this. I have no idea. You know, don't confuse me with someone who knows what they're doing. That's not me. You know? And so it's been a remarkable journey and a remarkable process. And you know, so here I am in Kiev, of all places. You know, who would have thought? Not me. You know, and so the conversation continues, and it just seems to be growing and expanding. I am now a celebrity, which my children think is very funny. My friends think it's funnier. You know, my girls told me, Amy and Lexi, they are 23 and 20, and they said, Dad, you have so ruined the idea of celebrity for us. Which is, I think is great. It's too funny. My 3.5-year-old grandson is Gavin. I'm William Paul. My father's William Henry. My son is William Chad, my firstborn son. My first grandson's William Gavin. We all go by our middle names, so I'm Paul. It was a joke on the first manuscript I put with William Pol Янг, William P. Young. It's a joke. Which was great, because when the book first came out, it said, by William P. Young. And so I would have people who know me call me up on the phone. Have you read this book by this William Young? He thinks just like you. That's good. And so that was pretty funny. But I'm with Gavin, and I'm putting him in his car seat a couple weeks ago. And I had a stack of the Shack, because I was giving him to a cancer center. Because the book has gotten into places that are just, I mean, it's all through the prison system, it's all through the military, it's just unbelievable. And he likes books. He looks at it and says, what are all those books? I said, well, your grandpa, he wrote that book. He said, you wrote all those? I said, yeah, your grandpa, he's a book writer. Isn't that cool? He goes, not really. And that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing, you know. And so it's, again, very remarkable. At this point, I want to hear your questions. And we'll just let the questions take us in whatever direction that they do. But I love questions and responses. And you can ask me anything about me, about the book, about, you know, I don't know if you know, but there's been controversy about the book, you know. Some people have not liked it. But I can tell you this is a remarkable thing. In all the responses from anybody that works with people, like psychiatry, psychology, 12-step programs, the prison system, hospice, spiritual formations, I have yet to get one negative criticism. The negative criticism has come from a small group of very vocal religious people who, with great intentions, this has challenged their paradigm, because I used imagery that they are not used to. And they're afraid. They're afraid that it is, even my mother, she's my mother, you know. Her son writes this book, so she really tries to read it, you know. And she gets to the point where God the Father comes through the door. And if you don't know, God the Father, who I call Papa, Papa is a large, black, African-American woman. That's the image that I use for God the Father. And so when God the Father comes through the door, this large, black, African-American woman, my mother closes the book, picks up the phone, calls my sister. Debbie, your brother is a heretic. That's my mother, right? So it has been somewhat of a challenge. There's a remarkable story. If we have time, I'll tell you how my mother got past that. Which is an incredible story by itself. But I love the controversy. You know, I think that's as much the work of God as the healing that's happened, you know, as a result of the book. And controversy is not a bad thing at all. A lot of the really angry people about the book have not read the book. I had my first protesters with the bullhorn, and you know, they're out there in Orlando, Florida, you know, along with Mickey Mouse, you know. And so I have my protesters, and I'm going, 3 years ago I was shipping and receiving, I have protesters? How cool! So I took them bottles of water, because it was really hot, you know. I'm giving them water. One of them says, do you work here? I said, no. He said, who are you? You know, because my face is not known. I said, I'm the guy who wrote the book you're mad about. Well, we start talking, and I come to find out not one of the protesters had read the book. Not one of them. You know? But that's sometimes what happens when people, they get an idea that, oh, this is obviously something we don't like. And it's like I don't have to really understand it to not like it.